So I reiterate here, the bill is dead.
The story of this great city is about the years before this night. We are free!
Hey, this is Ho Ho Hong Kong. I am Andy Curtin. I'm here with my very good friend
Vivek Mahbubani.
and we have a great guest today. Pretty excited about this one. I know some of our friends are excited about it. We've got Antony Dapiran. How you doing, man?
Very well, thank you. Yeah.
If you want to catch me online, you can check me out at Andy Curtin on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Today, just Google Vivek Mahbubani. You'll find something about
just
me.
Google it?
Yeah, just Google it.
Good luck spelling it.
I worked on my SEO, my search engine optimization.
Did you really?
No.
I know you didn't.
I figured nobody could check if I did.
There ain't no... Are there any other famous Mahbubanis?
There's a Kishore Mahbubani who's apparently like a scientist, and people think he's my uncle. And I say, yeah, if it helps me get the gig, sure. You know, if you want his recommendation.
You can book me at your science fair.
Yeah,
do you want people to find you online? You got a big Twitter account?
Yeah, Twitter at AntD, A-N-T-D is probably the best place to find me.
That's great. All right.
NTD, nice.
So, just the reason we're bringing you on, you know, among other things, is you've had a book come out this year, City on Fire, and that was your earlier book. I think was City of Protest, right, in 2017.
Yeah, that's right. So after the Umbrella Movement, I wrote my first book, City of Protest: A Recent History of Dissent
This
in
city
Hong
has
Kong.
given you some great content.
A lot of material. That came out in 2017. And then my second book, City on Fire, Fight for Hong Kong, came out at the beginning of this year, focusing on the events of last year, of course, because my first book needed an update after what happened last year.
Totally. Yeah. So 3 years from now, you're going to be calling your buddies like, hey, you guys upset about anything?
It's going to be, we're going to do the whole feng shui thing, city on wood, city on
earth. All the elements covered. Yeah.
It's just a matter of time. Well, I mean, so the protests, a lot of people obviously know about it, and a lot of people know part of it. What I always find is that a lot of people don't know chapter one of the protest, where it all began. But then, like, things have changed so fast, especially in Hong Kong. Like things like today we get this news, tomorrow we got that news we forgot about yesterday. It's just a crazy time. Even like for comedy. Even everyone is like, some people came to shows thinking, I want to hear some jokes about the protest to lighten things up. Other people would be like, could we not talk about the protest, please? Could we talk about general?
Oh, yeah. I remember, actually, that reminds me of when Trump won and people were doing all this Trump material that was killing. When Trump won, you couldn't do Trump material. People just did not want to hear about it.
Yeah,
because
it was too real.
Yeah. So before we get too far into the protest stuff, what's the abridged version of how you ended up in Hong Kong? Hometown?
Hometown Melbourne,
Same
Australia.
here. There we go.
Yeah. So I studied law and Chinese language at Melbourne Uni, and then spent 2 years in Beijing. Melbourne Uni's got an exchange program with Beijing University.
As a uni student, you were there.
Yeah.
So can I ask what year?
I was there 95, 96, and then 97.
Man, that must have been a great time.
Yeah, it was pretty different. Yeah.
So they must have just been coming out of kind of the post period of everyone leaving in the beginning of the 90s, right?
Yeah, it was sort of the post Tiananmen freeze had sort of ended, and it was sort of starting to open up. It was just sort of starting to get more foreign investment and starting to modernize, but it was sort of pre-WTO. So it was sort of after WTO in 2000, 2001 that started to really boom in the mainland. But those years, you still felt... Look, it was pre-internet years as well, just to date myself, and you felt pretty isolated there. You weren't really plugged into the rest of the world as you are these days when you're in China. So yeah, it was pretty different.
If you have a VPN. Did you ever cross paths with Darshan?
I
asked that. He's not as a Chinese person saying how's your Chinese, but actually he's a buddy of mine.
Oh, really? Yeah. I appeared on the same television program as Darshan once, and I lived several doors down the corridor from his former room in the Beijing University dormitories, which is kind of this hallowed site, as you can imagine.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
The Canadian flag sticker is still on the door. At least it was back then.
That's amazing.
So yeah. So like Darshan and I guess many other Chinese-speaking foreigners in China at the time, I had my fair share of silly appearances on Chinese TV. But then after that, I came to Hong Kong to start work as a lawyer, and have sort of been between here and Beijing back and forth pretty much ever since.
What moved you to Hong Kong? Like the work itself, or you decided I want some change?
Yeah, the work.
Beijing's got to be intense for long periods at that time, right?
Beijing's
intense now.
Fun, yeah. I lived there again, sort of full time 2004 to 2010, so sort of in the lead up to and around the Olympics. But originally I had to come to Hong Kong just for the boring technical reasons of getting my legal qualification, my bar qualification. So I came here and then worked for a few years here because it's kind of a good place to learn the ropes and sort of build, start up your professional career. So,
Probably easy to be a lawyer here than there.
I figured
right?
I was like, at least you open the book, like, let me look at page 7 on line number 7, right? And over there it's like, does it feel illegal?
Yeah, that's right.
Does it feel? Because it feels illegal to me, so it's illegal, isn't it?
I need to ask my boss if today it's legal or not.
Yeah, exactly.
And back then, even more so, right? Like in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was there wasn't a lot of law in the mainland. But so that's how I ended up here.
And grew a bit of a passion for the city, I guess.
Yeah, although interestingly, because Beijing was sort of my first second home, if you want to put it that way. For many years, I was going back and forth, and I honestly had a lot more passion for Beijing than Hong Kong for many years. And the thing that really turned that more than anything else was the umbrella movement. I was back here living in Hong Kong by then, and I was living in Admiralty, not far from where the main umbrella movement site was, and just. I was there sort of from the very beginning and sort of, the tear gas on 20th of September and all that stuff. And I'm there every day and just the spirit of community that built up around that. And that was a time when I really started to get interested and engaged in Hong Kong issues and Hong Kong politics. That was when probably the first
And the legal
moment-
profession was pretty involved in the early stages of it, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the legal profession's always been, because a lot of these issues at dispute or at controversy in Hong Kong are kind of legal issues, whether it's constitutional issues of voting or rights and freedoms. There's sort of law at their core. So the legal community has always been pretty well engaged. But that was just, the umbrella movement was the first time that I really felt connected to the city, and probably when, if you could say, Hong Kong replaced Beijing in my heart as my second home, I suppose you want to put it that way.
Interesting,
So-
yeah.
Yeah, the umbrella movement, it was interesting because if you went to the sites, like physically went there, you would be surprised. People had water they were giving away for free. I was like, this is not Hong Kong. No one's giving away free water.
How
just
is
like
someone
that.
not taking advantage of this capitalist opportunity?
Yeah, I know. But when I got there, I'm like, wow.
Just like branded umbrella water.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, we're sponsored by this guy next to me. Bought 5 bottles of Vita water. No, but it was fun.
Yeah, and the sense of community was so strong,
It was
right?
very strong.
It was really welcoming to people from all walks of life, and just it was it was a really all embracing spirit and culture.
I think that was the
there.
one thing a lot of relatives, they would read about in the news and everything, but they would never go down to the sites. And I would say, look, it's one thing looking in the news, but going there and feeling the whole environment, you're like, wow, this is interesting. This is like something I've never really felt in Hong Kong. Where
Says the guy who refuses to go in nature. That's a bit of a double
nature.
standard.
It was all concrete. It was highways and people.
Best camping in Hong Kong ever, right? Tents on a highway.
Exactly. Right? I mean, the one thing you wouldn't find there were potted plants. Nobody brought plants down to the site.
That's
They
amazing.
were like, we're not going to destroy the plants.
Yeah, enough tear gas around.
The lack of nature made me feel this is home.
So for people that don't know, essentially the issue that the umbrella movement, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but they had the elections weren't going to be free and open for people to put them to nominate themselves.
Yeah, so
The screening process going on.
That's right, for the election for the chief executive.
But what I didn't realize is they weren't. This was as a person that I only moved to Beijing to Hong Kong a year ago. So, but they weren't able to vote before, right? Like they weren't.
Right.
Right. So it was something that had just promised and never happened.
Yeah, exactly. So originally the chief executive was elected by this election committee of sort of the great and the good that were very heavily pro-Beijing. And Beijing had promised that they would allow universal suffrage for election of the chief executive. But when they eventually came up with the model that they would offer for this election to be provided, it still had that committee who became sort of the nominating committee, and any of the candidates had to get through that committee, and they would only allow 2 or 3 people to run. And it wouldn't be a situation where anyone from the community could sort of decide they were going to run in this race. And it was pre-screening the candidates, and so people were protesting and saying we want genuine, open, free and fair elections for this chief executive. But Beijing didn't allow that.
And at that point, because can I say journalist? Like you've published a lot of articles.
Yeah, writer, journalist.
And was that what kind of led you to being an author? Did you see yourself as being an author before that?
Yeah, no. Look, I'd always been interested in writing and always sort of thought I would like to pursue that more, but it was certainly the umbrella movement that gave me the opportunity to do that, and that's certainly when I started writing more and led to my first book, and which sort of then led to eventually, pivoting to stopping lawyering altogether and just doing writing full time. So, yeah.
I mean, my motivation, I've written before for some online magazines, and the real motivation was not so much about I want to be an author or like a journalist. It was more like they were like, we'll pay you by the word. I'm like, whoa, what? Wait, what? You mean like obs and those get counted? Like, yeah. I'm like, oh, yeah.
I'm writing in Cantonese.
Yeah, I went against every comedic instinct of like edit until it's as simple as possible.
Just
like,
verbose. It's like opposite to comedy.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
everything
adding as many words as possible.
Yeah, just exaggerate or explain stuff that you're like, we know what that means.
An umbrella is like a curvature.
Yeah, reminded me of the times when it was raining and I didn't have one. And it symbolizes the blah, 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 blah. And they're like, okay, fine, whatever.
So would it be fair to say it sounds like this is something we talk about a lot, is like there was a secondary personal story of you finding your way to your passion project?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I had a pretty long career in the law and reached the point where I thought there wasn't much new to experience in that, at the same time as I was getting more and more interested in the writing and just the issues that were engaging me in Hong Kong. And so it was a sort of a gradual transition over a number of years, but certainly that was the case.
I guess it was just so vivid. I mean, like telling people about the story itself. I mean, the whole umbrella movement was just such an interesting
Were you
thing.
as involved in the umbrella movement as you were the most recent
I wouldn't
one?
say I was as involved. I mean, I wouldn't be camping overnight at the sites, but I'd be there during the daytime.
That's you and outdoors.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
I don't
why.
even care if this is the most passionate thing I feel
Yeah,
about.
it goes
I'm
against
not
my
staying in a
grain.
tent.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, a tent is used in the wild. I can't be associated with
So the
wild,
Be Water strategy was like your beat. You're like, I get to go home.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the fun thing is that you never get bored of it. Like, so the umbrella movement, I was joking with a friend before. I'm like, it's such a Hong Kong thing that they
So
were worried
long.
people get bored of it. So we had 3 sites, Mongkok, Causeway Bay. So it's like a convenience factor. Like, hey, you can't be like, I live in Kowloon. Nope. We got Mongkok for you. You can't be like, it's too late. There's no travel and stuff. No. Where do you live? Causeway Bay is easy. It's near the harbor. You have all that stuff.
Yeah, and then it's like, of course, they had the speeches from the podium. Then there'd be people like singing songs. There'd be like a cinema screening, and there'd be like all these little arts and crafts booths.
Yeah.
Well, they set it up so students can
You had
study there,
tutorial
right?
centers,
I think you
like
mentioned that in the
literally
book.
benches with tutors. People come volunteer as tutors to kind of teach kids
Which
after
is like,
school.
this will keep them here.
Yeah, exactly. Parents are like, you can't
Further
protest. Wait,
your
what,
career.
free tutoring.
He'll-
Okay. Okay, in that case, yay! We want universal suffrage too. I'll see you at 7.
I'll buy some umbrellas.
Yeah. Right after the whole thing, parents are like, "This is really good. I want to protest more. This is helping my kids. The grades are improving."
Yeah, I don't know if that really worked out for many of them. So it was ultimately unsuccessful, though, right? I mean, that was the...
Yeah.
Ultimately, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the government just refused to come to the table at all. CY Leung was the chief
So
executive
unlike
at the time.
Beijing as well. I mean,
Yeah.
they're so
I mean, they
famed
actually-
for their compromise.
The weirdest thing is they actually did have the meeting with you could say, the movement leaders. So they had them. They sat there. You could see.
So
the
there
guys-
were elements of victory, right?
Well, no, there were elements of we will listen to you.
Yeah.
But it was clear, like, we don't have to listen to you, but we'll do a show, we'll shake your hands, and if you go to jail after that. And yeah, these guys went to jail, and it was like, there you go. So no, nothing happened. So the idea really was that more for show, that fine, you want to talk, let's talk. So having a leader taught everyone like, oh, so then they're going to prosecute the leaders, and then done, the whole movement fades out. If your leaders are caught or arrested or in jail, you don't know where to go, right? You're a headless chicken running around then. So that was the idea. But I think, like you said, the interesting thing is that all the arts and creative thinking all started coming out. People were shocked because there was a whole thing about before where the old generation were mocking the new generation, saying they're soft, they're on their phones all the time, what they call fighting, which is like a wasted youth. And they were like, oh, these kids are going to have no future, they have no courage, they can't do anything, they're just weak. And when the umbrella movement started, it was just like, whoa, the creativity level. Like, no one would have imagined that level of creativity in a place like Hong Kong, right? And no one would imagine you'd have podiums coming up and people just saying stuff, singing songs, whatever. You'd be like, people can sing here? I never knew that. Or, people watching movies, like literally sitting around, crowding around happily next to strangers on the roadside without a mat. It's like you wouldn't even sit. People put newspapers on the MTR train seats so they don't get the germs over there. But here it's like, fine, it's pavement, I'll sit over there. So it was a really bizarre moment that you're like, wow, Hong Kong's really, really multifaceted. Right? And that's what I think blew a lot of people's minds away.
Yeah, I mean, I now look back on the umbrella movement as being important, firstly, as a cultural movement
Yeah.
rather than a political movement. And then secondly, because of the lessons that all the protesters took from it into
Yes.
last year's movement and
Correct.
how it sort of was another milestone in this ongoing path of dissent and protest in Hong Kong. But the cultural aspect just really stands out as something quite special.
Yeah. Did you take anyone to the Umbrella Movement protest sites and stuff?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I happened to have family coming and visiting from Australia at the time.
Yeah.
Took them down to visit the
Took
site.
a few
and-
dates down there.
Yeah.
Went down with my helper.
Find a
Took the
little
dog
dark
for
corner.
a walk.
Yeah.
But it's also because I was living nearby, I would walk to and from work every day
Passing by.
through the site, which sort of became my commute, which was a really nice way to,
Start
sort
the
of
day.
start and end the day. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what for both of you? Here's a question: like, how successful was the most recent protest? Really?
It's really hard to say successful. I mean, I can't really say it's a success, but in its own weird ways, it's brought a lot of things together. One of the highlights for myself, or at least that people would notice in my community, was October 20th last year when they had the illegal march in Tsim Sha Tsui side, and they were supposed to have the attacking of Chungking mansions, and then ended up having the cops spraying the mosque. That one.
Oh
was-
yeah, with the
Yeah.
blue stuff, or whatever.
Yeah, the blue, what they thought was disinfectant, but turns out it was just like wrong to do to a mosque. That was a moment basically that what they call the We Connect moment. So We Connect used to be Carrie Lam's slogan when she was campaigning, when she did the whole show of, I'm going to try to win, when she knew she was going to win, right? So We Connect was her slogan. Clearly there was no creativity in that. Oh, not even grammatically correct. We connect what? Nobody knows, right? Anyway, so that was basically there were rumors that people were going to attack Chungking mansions because Jimmy Shum was attacked a few days ago by triads and mobs or whatever apparently might have been South Asians. And so suddenly the whole protest movement
Right,
was
so
like,
people thought South Asians might be a problem.
yeah, let's take revenge on them. And obviously Chungking Mansion is a really good representation of South Asian community. So let's attack Chungking Mansions. And so a bunch of us were talking, and we were like, no, we don't believe this is what people are thinking. So how about we stand outside Chungking Mansion and show that we're not afraid, we're not going to
And
close
you did
Chungking
that.
I was one of the people that were discussing in the group.
I believe you were the head of it. No, just kidding.
For safety reasons. No, actually, no, I wasn't. Honestly, I wasn't the head. I would take full credit. If I
No,
was.
I'm just being a dick.
No, but basically, so we would say, let's just stand outside, show solidarity, and also let people know Chungking Mansion's still open. We trust you guys. Come on in. We don't. There's no fear. And eventually became like this thing of like.
I mean, you should definitely be afraid of Chungking mansions. Let's be honest.
Oddly
here.
enough, it was reverse, right? Normally people are like, I don't want to go in. Everyone's like, let's go in, right?
That's the
So-
safe day.
And they're
Yeah.
giving out water to protesters and stuff
so
as
the
well.
water thing
Yeah.
was just like another small idea that some guy, one of the guys in the groups had, and say, let's just give out water. And people walking by give out water is a nice gesture, and that turned into a big symbolic thing. Just the idea of like exchanging water bottles, and people would come up not because they needed water, they would have their own water bottle, but they wanted to just have that moment of I take your water, and we kind of like we're friends. Like go to someone's house, when you're a guest, hey, you want some water, get a glass of water, stuff like that. And that became a big thing. All of a sudden now, the South Asian, ethnic minority, whatever, was no longer your ethnic minority. Everyone's like, you're a Hong Konger now. The whole
All
image
these
changed.
years.
All these years of all those carnivals you would have, the Harmony carnivals. Let's look at some Indian guy dance on
Need to
stage.
give people water.
Yeah,
How much money did you spend?
Yeah, it was nothing, right? And it was just bizarre. Like we didn't expect that. We thought it was just a nice gesture, and then that happened. It was like super. It's so weird because like it was so positive, right? Like till around 2-3 p.m. and then of course the tear gas started down in Tsim Sha Tsui police station, right? Because it had to. And then we were like, well, never mind. People are still safe. It's all good. And then the whole mosque spraying thing happens. I'm like, well, there you go. That the headline's gone now. These guys are going to be the headlines. So much for our little water gesture. Right, but that was, I think, to me, a success.
Yeah, and people still remember. It certainly
Oh.
made a big impression at the time.
Very
Yeah.
big. I mean,
Yeah.
to the point, like before the NSL, schools were inviting people like myself to come and talk about that day. Be like, what were you guys thinking? What happened? Tell us more. It was really, really special.
So NSL mean that schools were like, we can't have you mention this ever again.
They don't even know what happened. They're like, what happened last year? They're like, what? Huh? Yeah.
Do you feel the protests were a success?
It's a complicated question. I mean, obviously, at the beginning they were a success. The extradition law was stopped, but they also ultimately provoked this
An even
national
worse
security law, which is that plus,
Yeah.
worse than probably anyone could have imagined, sort of as the worst possible outcome. on the one hand, again, they were a success because they prompted this incredible landslide victory for the pro-democracy parties in the district council election last year. But then turn it around, the government's now postponed the LegCo election and going to do everything they can, it looks like, to manipulate that so that the Democrats don't reproduce the same kind of victory again in terms of the elections. But I think that the thing that really stands out to me, notwithstanding the very obvious the very obvious bad stuff that was, to put it pretty bluntly, the outcome of last year, is two things. Firstly, the events of last year really have put Hong Kong in the forefront of sort of the global mind and the global conversation. Certainly, Hong Kong has become a little bit caught up in sort of at the front line between the US and China, but it also has, I think, helped to bring the world's attention to the role of Chinese government influence around the world. So I think Hong Kong,
like in Australia, it was just
exactly, yeah. And so
they
Hong Kong,
were so ready to talk about it finally.
Yeah. It was it really played a pivotal role in the events of the last year or two, alongside COVID as well. But I think Hong Kong came first and really sparked that whole discussion. And then the other thing, sort of the second positive outcome from last year, or you want to call it a success or a victory, is the building of this community spirit, and what you were just talking about in terms of not integrating, but welcoming Hong Kong's ethnic minority communities as to feeling part of Hong Kongers. But what other people have called this kind of nation building in Hong Kong, and we're not talking about Hong Kong independence, just to be very clear, but about the sense of a unique Hong Kong identity. And I felt that was really reinforced and built upon and made more inclusive, and just made even stronger in the course of the events of last year. And look, at the end of the day, national security law or not, the 2 million people who are on the streets protesting last year are all still here. And they still, I don't think anything's changed about the way they feel about those underlying values and the things.
Not
they feel
all of
about
them are
being
still
Hong Kongers.
here.
Well, a few have left, but
All right, so
some of them are in Shenzhen.
1.99 minus 12, right?
right, yeah. But yeah, so and I think that's been an important step in this ongoing development of a Hong Kong identity. And I think, as I say, it's not over.
I had this thought the other day that, like, just reading your book, I was thinking that, living in mainland China, it's like so frustrating that you're just never going to get people to see the Chinese government for any of the negative things that it does. But part of that is that they're just not exposed to it at all, and they're exposed to so much that will discredit any hint of wrongdoing by the Chinese government. But that strategy works when you're able to fully control what they're getting. But in Hong Kong, like, the cat's out of the bag. Like, people already have the perception of the government. You can't reverse it by controlling the internet or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's a different situation where, for sure, there are people on the mainland that have, a negative perspective and they don't want to talk about it. But I think for the vast majority of people, they don't really think the government is a bad thing. Whereas, like, here, there's this sort of, how long can you keep that under wraps? How long can you just tell people, mate, how long can you use fear to get people to shut up?
I mean, like, that's also a Hong Kong thing, right? Like, we just generally don't like authority. Like, nobody
Dude,
likes
that's
their boss.
Australia is like that. Like, our heroes are like Ned Kelly. The whole concept of
I think it's just over here because, like, see, the Hong Kong mentality has always been like, you're better than me. It's always like a lot of that, right? So it's like when you have someone who's up there doing stuff, you're like, you can't even, how much are you getting paid? Like, literally the biggest argument was the chief executive gets paid like $500,000 Hong Kong dollars a month, and she's doing what? And just like, I could do that for half the money. Like, I'm happy to do that. Like, how?
I could screw the job up for way less.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I could do that. Right? Everyone's just complaining. They're like, how much was she getting paid for what and doing what? Like, that's not right. I mean, I'll face press every day, no problem. I don't really care. I just ignore the questions. So stuff like that, I would say that, and the umbrella movement, the teaching we learned from that, and also, so this is the craziest thing. I keep saying this. All this stuff really happened because the first protest with 1 million people marching, it was really simple. We want the extradition bill to be withdrawn, right? So you see 1 million people out of 7-point-something million people in Hong Kong on the streets. A general person will think, what, maybe we shouldn't do this bill.
Especially when it's such a massive percentage of the people in the city.
Yeah, right? Like, maybe, okay, let's say we still want to do the bill. How about we be smart? Let's take a week off. Let's maybe say, okay, you know what, we'll reconsider it a bit and all that. 11 something p.m. that night, she comes out with a statement saying like, okay, people came out, that's great. The bill will be continuing this Tuesday. I'm like, what?
It was like a gigantic middle finger to the whole city.
It was,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Like you could see the whole, because I was still outside at around 11 and you could see 11 something. All of a sudden people are like getting up. I was actually where what they call Bodai, which is like the Lechco complex. I was there and you could see 11 some people like suddenly getting up and stuff. I'm like, what's going on? Why did the moose suddenly? Because honestly, the first protest, everyone was like, hey, you know what? 1 million people, dude. Like, I think we did it. Like, this is the biggest number we've ever had. Like, clearly, we've done
That's
it.
got to do something.
Yeah, it's got to do something. And then you get the statement saying, like, yeah, no, nothing's changing. We're doing what we're going to do. And everyone's like, what? I think that was the one thing where I'm like, all right, this was a mistake. This was the breaking point of like, had she just said, you know what, we'll come back to this next week.
We'll reconsider. Yeah, go back to the drawing board.
Everyone literally would go home like, all right, job done. Got to go to work tomorrow. It's a busy
Well,
day.
I mean, as a non-Chinese person, you know, my first thought is there's that element of losing face. Like, was she even in a position where she could back down?
I think if you know Carrie Lam from her previous experience and everything, she's a very rigid person, as in like she's very thick-skinned and also very like she won't bend, right? Yeah, from what I've read about her, heard about her from before. So
yeah, but I
it's
mean,
like-
to play devil's advocate to that, she didn't bend and she won. Like,
well, I mean, the system won. She didn't win. Let's be very honest.
but I mean, like, she's
Yeah.
the chief executive.
Sure,
you know?
yeah. I mean, I admit that. So I mean,
I mean, I'm not saying this because I think it's a good thing, but like, let's be realistic
Yeah.
about this. Is like,
Yeah, well, I mean,
they got the better outcome than they started trying to get.
yeah, but I mean, Hong Kong is clearly not a normal polity,
Yeah.
right? It's not a normal democratic system where the government is answerable to the people. At the end of the day, it's, you know, Beijing calls all the shots.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, from Beijing's point of view, if there's a point that they're not going to waver on, they can carry on until, you know, the whole city burns to the ground, you know,
Yeah.
which it looked like they were going to do at a certain
Sure.
point last year, right?
Definitely, yeah.
And they don't care because at the end of the day, what's 7 million
yeah.
people out of 1.4 billion? So, you know, it's not a normal. It's
Yeah.
not a normal dynamic.
Yeah.
So what's the situation now? Like, where are we at?
I don't know how you feel. I mean, I feel now in a certain way, it feels a lot like what it felt after the umbrella movement,
Yeah,
right?
I would
People
say.
are dispirited, a bit depressed, feel like, okay, and people felt this way after the umbrella movement too. We gave it all. We gave it our all. Don't think there's anything more we could do. And still the government's ignored us and is sort of, you know, squashing us and pushing us away, and there are no avenues left. And in the years after the umbrella movement, people would say to me, in fact, my first book was called City of Protest, and people would say to me, you know, kind of, City of Protest, huh? Well, look, you know, Hong Kong now, would you still call it a city of protest? And
Came
would
back
sort
with
of
a vengeance.
and I would say it back then. I said, look, you know, all the underlying factors, and you know, the city hasn't changed, the people haven't changed, and it's just going to take the next trigger for it to happen again. And indeed, it did last year. And so I think we're in that same mode of sort of regrouping and reflecting and mourning a little bit the things that have been lost. But I think that the underlying spirit will still be there, and it'll, you know, whether it's 5 years time or whenever, something's going to come back
Yeah.
again. But I don't know, how do you feel?
No, I think the same thing as well. I mean, right now we're in this little phase of like, okay, regroup, rethink, because the situation has been so surprising. Like, honestly, the NSL, the National Security Law, it was such a surprising fact. We're like, whoa, okay, this is a completely new concept. Like, we need to rethink our strategy now, you know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I felt like they just went, you know what? We were going to take 10 years to do this. Let's make it 3.
Yeah, but
You
also,
know, whatever. They just sped the. It wasn't like that NSL wasn't coming at some point.
yeah, but I mean,
You know.
there's two sides to look at it. So it's really interesting where, yeah, you could say they sped it up. Instead of waiting until, let's say, 2047 or, you know, in the next 10 years, they did it this year, right? Now, at the same time, I always feel that sometimes when you speed things up too much, it has a backfire effect. Now, do not forget that 5 years ago, everyone was much younger. No one had the power to be like, you know, working.
I was
and
older
everything.
5 years ago.
Yeah,
so.
I work in reality. So 5 years later, everyone's gonna be 5 years more mature, or maybe more successful, or maybe more integrated into society in generally all different aspects. Do not like. I'll give you an example. Like, it's kind of like saying 5 years ago, the comedy scene in Hong Kong, it was really different from, let's say, what it is now. Like 5 years ago, you'd.
By
have
the way, this is the only reference point we have. For
Yeah,
anything,
we're
so
comedians.
you just have to
We
work
always
within
end up falling
within the
back to that.
framework.
You know, I mean, my material 5 years ago was not Comedy Central.
It's
material,
kind of like
you
a
know?
knock-knock joke, really.
Yeah,
That's-
exactly. You know, and it's just that 5 years ago, who's there is like illegal. Right? But I think you're absolutely right, Anthony. As in, like, we're in this dormant period where we're kind of like, okay, you know what? Let's just take it easy. Everyone's a bit disheartened for sure. I can tell, like certain anniversaries, everyone's a bit like, forget it. Like Halloween. Halloween's another good example of telling people like how crazy the city can be. So last year Halloween, everyone's out, right? But everyone's out for really different reasons. Normally they're dressing up and everything, but it was a fantastic time. You got the anti-mask ban, and we can wear masks. Oh, this is the golden opportunity, right? So everyone's come out. It was a crazy time. If you were down there, you would be like, what is going on, right? You've got cops on Linda's terrace and stuff like that, just ready to fight and everything. And then this year, Halloween, everyone's like, yeah, what happened? Nobody cares. Did Halloween happen? We don't really care. So it's kind of like the anniversary, the opportunity didn't really work out because we're like, well, no, this is not the strategy.
Because Halloween was a big night this year.
It was big, but it wasn't last year big.
Really?
They shut down Lan Kwai Fong, dude.
I remember we had
guys were there?
the
Yeah,
California Tower. We weren't operating at that point, but I remember how bad it was. And I remember the significance for the venue, or the bars and stuff last year was that they'd been hit so bad by the protests that, Halloween's one of the biggest earning nights of the year.
Yeah.
They were like, this is our night to make some money back.
Yeah.
And then there was, I don't want to say who, but there was stories of certain landlords being complicit in letting the police kind of take the night away from them.
Alan Zeman. I think you can say Alan Zeman.
I'm not saying Alan. That's not who I'm definitely not saying that.
So I'm saying like what I would say the next book you write, you're gonna have a lot more. I mean, with the City on Fire and stuff book that you had, you've talked about the protest, but I think in 5 years' time there'll be a lot more evolution in the sense the game won't only be more a surface or visual. It's going to be integral to society. Like, for example, the district council elections.
Yeah.
Let's be very honest. People came out to vote not because they wanted to win, but it was more like this is my middle finger back to you. Right? I woke up first thing in the morning, 7 a.m. I was out and about. I'm like, I never wake up at that hour. Like, I cannot believe to vote at something that I could vote throughout the whole day. I woke up this early to do it. Right?
And look, I was going to say, it's the first time I ever voted in a district council election.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever sort of knew the district councils existed really before last year, and suddenly everyone's paying attention to them.
Yeah, because I mean, like, what are they going to change? The potted plants on the streets? I mean, like, it's not really a big impact, but it's more like let me show you my voice.
And I feel like that the district council elections, and also tied with this other sort of post-umbrella movement thing of the grassroots getting more engaged, and you can certainly feel, at least in certain districts, that there's kind of a yellow district mentality growing up around certain areas. I mean, I live sort of in Western District around Sangpoon, where there's all the district councillors are yellow, and there's a lively, vibrant street culture and sort of a local heritage that combines to sort of create this really powerful grassroots movement around a local identity and a Hong Kong identity, which sort of feeds also into the pro-democracy movement as well. And I think we're seeing that in a lot of different districts around town.
Now, at this moment, I'd like to clarify to all our international listeners, when we say yellow...
Yeah, I was about to say the same. It's a political colour.
What we really mean is the yellow
They're
cat.
like pretty yellow politicians.
Look at these three non-Chinese guys talking about yellow people in Hong Kong. So yellow is the pro-democracy, blue camp is the pro-Beijing camp. So just to clarify. Okay, please do not get upset.
I'll edit that part out.
Yeah, don't unsubscribe yet. Yeah.
So here's a question that I have. It's easy to say that the movement doesn't have leaders, but it needs leaders. Is there a concern that they are still, with all this surveillance, able to pick off the leaders? Like, how many leaders can you lose?
Yeah, I mean, certainly they are trying to pick off the prominent activist leaders, and also,
I mean, this is a strategy they roll out everywhere.
Yeah,
you cut off anybody that's causing trouble, and eventually there's no more trouble.
Yeah, and also they're clearly trying to sort of decapitate the pro-democracy parties inside LegCo as well, so that the more prominent leaders are around who are involved in sort of the official politics as opposed to the street politics. And then the other thing they're doing is effectively sending people into exile. And this is another classic tactic of the government in Beijing, that sort of once dissidents go into exile overseas, they pretty quickly become irrelevant sort of become out of sight, out of mind. So I think that they are doing what they can to target anyone, not only who sort of is leading, but sort of anyone actively organizing. So if you run a Facebook group that they don't like, the Facebook group admins are the ones that are getting arrested, or the Telegram group admins are sort of being targeted. So it starts to make it personally risky for people to engage in organizing, in community organizing. And yeah, it's sort of they're trying to intimidate.
I mean, that's what I thought is like with the NSL. I thought this has got to get to a point where people just can't risk their life anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like you're slowly putting people in a cage, like, and you get used to the cage. Like they have that saying, right? A bird that's always been inside a cage looks at other birds thinking, "Why would you want to fly around? This is fantastic. You know, things are good already over here." So in the same way, with the NSL, you slowly get used to it. That's the idea, right? They slowly wear you down. You're like, well, you know what?
And the
life is
vagueness
alright.
of it as well.
Yeah, and I think we're all in this early period where the law hasn't really been tested. So there's these vague, sort of woolly, broad provisions of the law out there, but they haven't yet gone through a court process where the courts have sort of laid down clear lines of what is and isn't acceptable. And the government and the police are, I think, taking advantage of that to try and push the envelope and arrest people for having blank pieces of paper or whatever, ridiculous stuff like this. So it's a climate of fear and uncertainty.
Have they been successful at using it? Like I know they've arrested people on the basis of a violation of the NSL, but have those people been successfully prosecuted?
No, so the trials haven't gone all the way through yet. So we don't know yet. So what?
But I think there's more to strike a fear, right? It's kind of like you say this, you're gonna get
but
that.
also like my experience they do this in Russia as well, but also in mainland China is like you have the law in a vague way, and then the application, everyone's like, oh, this is how it works. But then when they change their mind, they just change how they apply it.
Yeah.
So there really is no protection.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's kind of like at a comedy show, you make fun of the
This is like the comedy club getting shut down.
Yeah, there's that as well. I mean, like, worry of what people will say. And also, it's like, let's say you go to a comedy club, you get booked for the gig, and you make fun of the owner, right? And then the owner gets pissed off, and then you never get booked again for the gig. So everyone else is like, yeah, let's not make fun of the owner. I want to get this gig.
I feel personally attacked right now.
your club's gone, dude. So
I'm never booking you again. That's it.
You went up to me in that one.
Do you feel at risk having written a book that's favorable to the movement?
Look, I don't. Mainly because I'm not engaged in those kind of activities that they seem to be targeting. I'm not an organizer or an activist, or I'm not involved in sort of at the front lines of any of the movement. I just sort of observe and report on and sort of analyze and comment on what's been going on. And I don't think, or at least I hope, we haven't yet reached the point in Hong Kong where people are at risk just simply for what they say or for criticizing the government, as opposed to advocating actively for things like secession and things like that they're targeting. So look, obviously I'm wary and careful and sort of keeping an eye on changes in the environment. But I'd like to think that there's still scope for people to write and comment and criticize.
Well, I mean, nothing's stopping you from one day having a revised edition of your book. A revised as in like the safer version.
City of no protests.
Yeah, City of Candle.
City very calm.
Yeah.
But look, I also recognize that I'm in a privileged position as a foreign citizen who if needs
Can
be
get the fuck out.
Can hopefully if needs be can leave, and there are a lot of people who don't have that privilege and have risked a hell of a lot more than I have. And so I don't feel like I'm at the forefront of this. So.
I think right now, honestly, especially with number one, English is a factor. Number two, also like unless you are big,
because it's in English, it's less of a concern.
I guess the impact is like comedy. I mean, honestly, the English comedy scene, I'm pretty confident the government's going to crack down on you after they crack down on the bigger guys, like the more famous comedians. Like if anyone,
it's not what happened in mainland China. They came after us first.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe you were nearby. Was it just convenient? Were they driving by and your punchline just came out?
I mean, you can guess, but you'll never know.
Yeah.
But certainly, we had more international media coverage.
Yeah.
Maybe we had less government connections
maybe
than
you guys were just funnier there and people noticing it more. Here the punchlines aren't so strong, so everyone's like, yeah, we'll let that slide.
Yeah, I don't know, but I to be honest with you, I think that the English scene has a life of counted in single digits.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, good
that
for
would
you.
that would be my guess.
I guess. Well, let me
Sorry
put it
to
this
bring
way.
the fucking
Yeah.
gloom about it.
I was just like, you're killing every optimism I had. Like, the scene here is good. You're like, no, not. Like, okay.
I love the scene is amazing.
Yeah.
but it's one of those things where it's like the bigger you get, the more likely you're going to get done.
Yeah, that and hence the reason why, in its own weird way, having the underground scene of comedy is actually a good thing. I mean, like, I'll put it this way: with books and everything, if anything, the government targeted. They removed books in libraries, right? Joshua Wong's books and everything.
Yeah. Books written by people like Joshua Wong and
Yeah,
Tanya
so
Chan,
the bigger, more
sort of,
prominent names. I would say that that's the first more symbolic, because let's be very honest, that the general community would know those guys, they would know those books, and that would be newsworthy and have an impact.
My understanding of the mentality of sort of the cultural bureaus in the mainland is it's like the loudest voices are the ones that need to be policed the most, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, you get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing they're concerned about is people who organize or sort of form connections in any way, whether it's, events or festivals or people that link up different parts of the community to form any form of alternative organization, any form of civil society that's not the government or not government directed is something they
Yeah.
You know what? If I had to be given honest answers to why I thought the English was killed first, and entirely killed. Like, you cannot get licensing for English comedy in the mainland anymore. But Chinese you can. And I think two reasons. Number one, they probably felt the English was harder to control. And number two, they didn't see any value in it whatsoever. There's no cultural value in it. And what they said explicitly was there was a concern of foreign ideas infiltrating.
Okay.
Whereas, like, it's in Chinese, we can hear what it is. It's the arts. We've got some mandates that we're filling by promoting the arts if we can control it.
Wow. Do they have translators in mainland China?
I mean, it's always been ridiculous. Like, we would submit scripts that were translated into Chinese, and we would just change any problematic words. And then they would send people to check on it that didn't speak English. And they'd stay for 10 minutes and be like, well, yeah, turns out I still can't understand English.
Yeah.
And then leave.
Those English comedy scripts translated into Chinese must just be the least funny
Man,
documents
some
ever.
of the stuff.
What a mess.
I remember Eddie Izzard he wanted his script. He had everything was fine except he had a joke about a monk self-immolating. I'm like, can we cut that joke?
Yeah.
Just that one joke,
Hard to translate.
Yeah, monk, a guy, self-immolating, feeling very hot.
Yeah. Bald man. Yeah.
感觉好热,
Yeah. You don't want to do that. So let me ask you that. Like, where do you see, let's say, in the next 5 years, do you have an idea?
What's the future? That's what I want to know.
What's your thing? Because, like, every year the wave gets crazier, right?
Yeah.
So what do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, certainly every protest movement has built upon the last, and the high point of one has kind of become the baseline for the other, which sort of leads to the immediate question: the next time we have a big protest in Hong Kong, does it go straight to Molotov cocktails? And,
was there a protest before the umbrella movement that you felt impacted that one? Because I didn't realize that in your book you said 1.5 million people protested Tiananmen Square.
Yeah,
which I was like, wow! Did you know that?
I don't know the number.
1.5 million people protested
I didn't
it.
realize the number.
Yeah, it was big. So yeah, I mean, there was the Joshua Wong and scholarism and the national education movement, sort of in 2011, 2012, which sort of a bunch of those tactics were then used in the umbrella movement, and then sort of going back before that, there were a series of cultural heritage protests around things like the old Queen's Pier and Star Ferry Pier in Central, which engaged a lot of the more sort of culturally aware and the beginnings of protesters willing to directly confront police in a more aggressive fashion, which sort of again fed into later movements. And then going back even earlier, 2003, the anti-Article 23 protest was sort of the first big example of huge numbers of people coming onto the street and successfully stopping at the time that national security law, and that was what.
So the Article 23 kind of was the national security law, right?
It was, yeah. It was the national security law of its time.
Oh,
yeah. And it was
so that
stopped.
that was on the table 17 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's always been suppressed. Article 23 was always the thing, like, they bring it up, let's go out, you know.
Like they talk about a fuck you.
Yeah, and
it's like,
and that's what everyone had in mind on that Sunday night in June last year, when a million people came out and we said, well, this is even more than we had to stop Article 23.
Clearly.
And
do you think it reveals that the real purpose of the extradition treaty was just to be a de facto Article 23?
A kind of deliberate Trojan horse thing. I mean, I don't.
Well, I just mean, like, they wanted the law for its practical application. So do they just call it something different?
No, it's substantively it was pretty different. I mean, the extradition law was much narrower than what we've ended up with.
Yeah, but if you can control whatever charges against conviction is against a person, then it's just a question of legally getting them across the border, right? Or am I wrong about that?
No, you're right. You're right. But I mean, I think still the national security law is much worse because it all can happen here, and it's there's just so many more branches and
sure, like they've set up the
they got the office here.
Yeah.
I mean to be using what was just the extradition bill to take people across the border, they could still do it, but it'd be much more limited in scale, and it'd be much more convoluted and complex, and there'd be much less legitimacy.
Also, the
around
police
it,
couldn't just charge them with it on the street, right?
Exactly. There'd be a lot of and they could do it to a small number of people if they wanted to, maybe each year, but they couldn't do it on scale like they can now do with the national security law. But to go back to your question, so there's sort of where do we go from here? I think we need there'll be again this sort of post-umbrella movement period of reflection and consolidation. The things that are sort of in my mind, on the one hand, you sort of think about the more the bad direction that things could go, and people talk about sort of Northern Ireland comparisons, and if people are squashed by this national security law, do you get people willing to take even more extreme measures to make their point to the government? And look, hopefully we don't go that way, but certainly there are ingredients there, and people who've looked back at history of Northern Ireland who can see certain parallels of at least one possible future that leads to Hong Kong going in that direction. I don't think, for many reasons, we will, and I don't think that's something that would be I think deeply shocking and unacceptable to people in Hong Kong.
Do you know what that reminds me of, though? And it was something I caught in your book, was when one of the protesters wrote, I think inside LegCo, you are the ones that taught me that peaceful protest doesn't work.
It's futile.
And I was like, whew.
That was a classic photo with this, with one of the police actually looking and reading it, and it's written on the wall.
And being like, yeah, you got me there.
Yeah. And I think that was the moment that everyone was like, yeah, you're right. You're forcing me to become this radical, right?
Yeah.
I think it's very true, because I'll be honest, I have friends who would never be this furious or this consider even going all the way out. I had friends who basically I was like, I cannot believe that you're padded up in your arms and you're ready to go where you need to go. Not that they actually were at the forefront, but they were ready for it. I'm like,
he's like, I'm just cold. I'm Hong Kong. I can't handle the winter.
Yeah, damn you malls with the air conditioning, right? I'm already padded up anyway, right? No, it's bizarre. I mean, I can totally understand. I'll give you an example. When they announced the anti-mask ban, that was a moment of what, right? And that night, people just went nuts. And it was kind of very weirdly understood that, okay, so tonight at 12 midnight, it's going to come into effect, right, this law. So before that, let's go nuts. Let's keep our masks on. Let's have some fun. And they were trashing everywhere, right? Different stations, MTR. We already did the MTR by then. So everything was getting trashed. And 11:59 p.m., whoever's watching Facebook Live would have seen. 11:59 p.m., all right, time's up. People were literally shouting, go Zhong, go Zhong. And boom. Everybody leaves, take the mask, throw it on the floor, and walk home. I was like, wow.
But then that weekend was when there was this expectation that there'd be this really furious reaction, right? It was like there was a typhoon coming in. Remember, all the supermarket shelves were emptied. People emptied the ATMs of cash. They were kind of battening down as if the city was going to kind of explode that weekend. Which it didn't to a huge extent, but certainly there was a lot of stuff going on on Saturday and Sunday. But but the other thing I was going to say, just in terms of where we're going from here, is that look, it's the sort of the spirit of this movement, or this mindset that was developed, this national identity that was built up around this movement, is pretty widely embraced by a lot of people in Hong Kong. And if you just go by the numbers who voted in the elections last year, a good 60% of the population. But if you look generationally at, say, anyone under the age of 30 or even under the age of 40, are all very have a pretty uniform view of these issues. And the government, in a way, has lost entire generations. And I don't know if the government can ever win those hearts and minds back. And so with all those people still here in this city, and they're just going to keep obviously growing up and becoming more influential, and eventually becoming people of influence in the community, and how that will change the dynamic will be interesting to see as well. So
one thing that I we were talking about how hard it was to figure out what's going on during the protests, and there were times when people would either say to you, this city is 100% behind the protests, and then I was like, the truth of it is, though, there are a lot of people out there that are either, if they're not pro-Beijing, they're sort of pro-stability and accepting that Beijing are going to come in eventually. And certainly, like, it was interesting the age brackets you said, because what I'd heard was people talking about their parents of just being like, we're part of China, this is it. And
I think that's also like an age factor as well. I mean, it's very normal for a 20-year-old to be rebellious.
And also they've lived
50-year-old.
through different things. Like they've probably been poor enough to know how bad it can go.
I mean, so the argument also was like, yeah, you're 50, you got to enjoy Hong Kong at its finest. So that's why you're like, okay with it, let's retire now.
You made your money. You don't want to lose. You've got money to lose.
Yeah. So actually that was one of the arguments that I think the pro-Beijing LegCo guys was saying, like, how dare you guys stop me from making my money now? Yeah, he was one of the guys who's like, this is my time for my reaping on my rewards that I've been sowing all my life. So now you guys are screwing that for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what I found really interesting were the kind of survey results that you saw coming out during the protest last year, where they were sort of public opinion polls trying to figure out who was sort of pro-government, pro-police, and who was pro-protester. And the pro-government, pro-police folks were either sort of 60-plus elderly bracket or people with only primary school education. And the people pro-protester were sort of up to age 30 and people with tertiary education or above. And so it's this kind of social division that you see kind of replicated all over the world. If you took the labels off those stats and said this is, pro-Trump, anti-Trump voters or pro-Brexit,
even
anti-Brexit.
pro-police in
right,
the
exactly,
US.
right? So it's a similar generational and class divide that you see here, which I just find really interesting. And I don't know what it is, or even if there are any factors that overlap, or it's just a coincidence. But clearly the government had lost not only the younger generation, but the educated
intelligent
middle class, right?
Yeah, the people that would build the city when
Right.
they get older.
Exactly, the kind of the driving force of this economy of this city. It's not a manufacturing city; it's a services economy, and it's all those people that drive it. So it's sort of a pretty devastating from the government's point of view. You're looking at it in purely mercenary economic terms.
Well, when you say that drive it, I'm like, well, the ones driving are probably the ones with the primary level education.
Literally, yeah. But yeah, it's interesting that kind of division is seems to be pretty clear here, and it's not unique to here.
On that point of making comparisons around the world, we've just found out that Biden won, which is a pretty good outcome. Is that good or bad for Hong Kong?
This is so bizarre for Hong Kong, right?
Because it's so many people in Hong Kong think it's a terrible thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this whole aspect of very strongly pro-Trump people or sentiments among the Hong Kong protesters, which I just can't quite fathom, to be honest.
Exactly. So it's like a weird thing. Like 4 years ago, had you told me, and 4 years later, you'd be like, you'd kind of want Trump to win again. And I'd be like, what? Impossible. But I think it's more because everyone's thinking, okay, Trump is willing to confront China, so we'll vote for him, regardless of his other issues. Biden seems a bit lighter on China, so we're like, I don't know, I want the guy, who's going to help my issues that we're dealing with. So we don't know what Biden will do. We really don't know. We don't feel he's going to be as strong as Trump has been on China, at least. But then again,
yeah.
I mean, is that unfair though? If they feel like their life is at stake, then doesn't it make sense to want the candidate?
But it's normal, yeah. That's.
I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm just saying that perhaps there's compassion that can be had for that. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of friends who are pro-Trump or at least pro-Republican. I don't agree with what anyone they said, but to just blanket say that they're stupid or idiots or something, I think doesn't really analyze.
Yeah, look, I mean,
situation properly.
I think from the Hong Kong protesters' point of view, they see the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act and the sanctions against Carrie Lam and the other senior government officials, and the very strong pushback.
Were they helpful?
Well, it's an interesting question. Yeah, I mean, so they see that as supportive of their cause, and so they sort of are, credit that to Trump and his administration, and see that as being strong voices in support of their cause. But the question you raise is a very good one. Are they helpful? Sanctioning Carrie Lam and other senior government officials, in my view, is going to only exacerbate a situation where the only people willing to take senior Hong Kong government appointments are people who basically have thrown their entire lot in with the mainland and with Beijing. Because if you know that you take this appointment, you're at risk of being, sanctioned by the US government and cut off from the international financial system. You're not going to get international cosmopolitan people, who are open-minded and widely traveled, right? You're going to get people who are sort of yes people to Beijing and sort of...
Is it possible to get anyone that's not yes people to Beijing?
Anyway, at this point, yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, but then similarly, the changing of Hong Kong's trade status with the US would seem to harm Hong Kong rather than help it. And yes, it harms Hong Kong's pro-Beijing business elites, but it also hurts ordinary people and ordinary businesses potentially. So, but if you subscribe to this. Lam Chao, this if we burn, you burn with us mindset, where we're just going to burn it all down. And there's a certain extreme view among the protest movement here that if we bring down Hong Kong, we may even be able to bring down the entire Communist Party rule over all of China. And that's the mindset that is sort of driving this sentiment towards let's just
but ironically, it
seems
seems like the Communist Party also thinks that. Right? How afraid are they of the perception of the protesters being successful?
So I think...
To me, it seems pretty clear, and it's not just a Communist Party thing. I mean, Putin's the same. Is they don't want to see parallel victories that could speak to the ears of the people in the mainland.
I guess it just shows weakness. I mean, that it kind of shows you're unable to control your own
but
people.
To me, it's such a vulnerable perspective, right? And I say that as a essentially layperson, but it's a little ironic to me that it's easy to say these extremist point of view is so far-fetched, but it's but hang on, the powerful opponent also thinks that.
Yeah,
they're also very concerned about the implications of a successful campaign here.
Okay, but yeah, I think they're concerned about the protest movement being seen as successful. I don't think they're concerned by the measures the US is taking against them. I think Beijing will just plow on.
Sure.
regardless.
Okay. Yeah. My point though was not that. Just moving away from the Biden point a little bit, but just to speak to that point of the significance. The idea that that a victory here could topple the mainland, the significance of it. I mean, how many protests are there in the mainland, but they just never get covered, right?
Yeah, and they don't connect up, and that's sort of one of the key things. They're never allowed to communicate and form alliances. But look, certainly the government in the mainland don't want there to be an impression that people on the street can change policy, or that the government is responsive to voices on the street. But also, I think they are being overly fragile in the sense that there's no sign that there was any sympathy or support for the Hong Kong protesters across the border in the mainland, and there was sort of no chance that you'd get sympathetic protests or sort of protests feeding off the Hong Kong protests breaking out in the mainland, and control over information and society in the mainland is so tight that I don't think the protests in Hong Kong ever would pose a genuine threat to party rule over China in any way.
Until we start sending messages in mooncakes. Or pigeons. We're going to go back.
Fortune cookies?
Oh, that's going to be the West infiltrating their thinking.
That's a Trojan horse right there.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Well, Antony, thank you so much for coming out today. It's been awesome.
Yeah,
been a real big learning experience. And I almost finished City on Fire, and I'm loving it. I'm going to get City of Protest next. So
thank you. Yeah, thanks for reading.
Highly recommended if anyone wants to check it out.